Hi friend, welcome to A Water Connection, a space created to learn, connect and multiply the power of a conversation to give visibility to the water industry. I'm Jess Borges, a passionate human who believes that you should increase your water curiosity. Welcome to this new episode. Today I'm joined by Mal Shepherd. We have invited him to A Water Connection to help us understand how major infrastructure projects get delivered. How do they go from an idea to a reality? Mal has over 35 years of water industry experience, both in the private and the public sectors, working on domestic and international markets. He has been involved in delivering some of Australia's most significant water infrastructure programs and projects with a broad range of contracting models. Currently, Mal is the Chief Development Officer at Sunwater, where he's responsible for multiple stages of project development life cycle, and we'll go into that today. Mal has a passion for sustainable development, and he's an advocate for enhancing performance in safety, wellbeing, diversity, and skills across the sector. Welcome to A Water Connection, Mal.
Thanks, Jess, and great to be here.
Thank you. Mal, you have been involved, as I was just mentioning, in the delivery of pipe water transfer systems, pumping stations, wastewater treatment and potable water treatment plants, and also advanced water treatment infrastructure such as recycled water and desalination plants. So who better than you to explain to us what are the main stages that a major infrastructure project like this needs to go through to become a reality? How does that happen?
It's a great question, Jess, and I kind of look at it as a little bit like an iceberg. So the delivery of a project is really the tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot of planning that goes into making a water infrastructure project come to reality. And I guess throughout my career, I've been involved in both public and private development of water infrastructure projects, and in some respects they are a little bit different. So I live in Queensland, and in Queensland we follow the Queensland Government project assessment framework, and that framework also follows the project life cycle. And that's around identifying a pipeline of opportunities, initiating, planning, executing, delivering, closing out, and commissioning of projects. So, in the development of projects, it's quite important that first of all, and it comes from an idea, as you said in the opening. So, all projects come from someone thinking about, what is the need, or what is a problem that we need to address, and then we go through a process of justifying the project and looking at various options, the benefits, the risk, the project costs. What might be the technical requirements associated with that project, and going through an investment logic mapping process, because projects need to have a benefit at the end of them, but in the development of those projects, we also need to understand the impact that those projects will create. In the private sector, we talk more about pre-feasibility, feasibility, and then moving into a FEED study before we actually get to a final investment decision. In the government context, that final investment decision is generally made at the end of a detailed business case, where the project owner will then go and procure the project and move it into the delivery phase. So predominantly my career has been in the delivery side, and but it is important that people appreciate the work that goes into the planning and development, and that is why in some cases it takes sometimes 5 or 10 years to develop a piece of water infrastructure.
Yeah, I think that's when you put it like that, when it comes from like the idea of one organization, of one person, one team, and then all the way into being delivered. Like if it has to go through all of those stages, then it's not a surprise that it could take 5 to 10 years for some of these projects to see the light. And I think the comparison you do with an iceberg is quite telling, because that's probably the tip of the iceberg is what community and like most of us will see, but like what is behind that and everything that has happened is amazing. And looking a little bit into that planning before we move into the delivery, do all the technical decisions or most of the technical decisions happen at that stage as well? Like there's any type of design for a particular infrastructure? I don't know if you want to focus it on an example or not, but even on that planning stage, there's already some design happening, right? Like even at those early stages of a project, not only at the end when it's only maybe detailed design and constructing.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Jess, and the engineering commences really at the inception of the project. So generally we come up with a concept design, then move into a reference design, which would be the basis of a detailed business case. But very early on in the piece, we need to look at various options, and so early engineering is done to I guess assess the feasibility or of those options, and also some of that informs other pieces of consultation that needs to happen, whether that's through undertaking an environmental impact statement or starting to test with stakeholders and community. And given the breadth of water, so water infrastructure projects, can be headworks projects. So could be located in the upstream waters of watersheds. It could also form the part of being a wastewater treatment plant, for example, that discharges into a receiving waterway, or it could be a desalination plant that is extracting from the ocean and discharging back into the ocean. So that planning phase is quite important to, I guess, understand fatal flaws and the like. And there's also a lot of site investigation that occurs, and studies to really understand, as I said, impact, which could, could be environmental impact, could be social impact, and the like.
Yeah, certainly. Like it's yeah, quite telling that of course the technical part needs to be present from the very beginning, even from that options, because it's when we're actually looking into what are the different possible solutions to that initial problem, which is how we started this whole thing. You mentioned like a little bit on the project, like the Queensland project framework, and that and the difference into like a private kind of approach into an infrastructure project. In terms of timeframes, does that different approach, which it has like common elements, but it's kind of different because it comes from government or for private, does that translate in like different timeframes in the development of a project?
Um, I guess my experience has been that private sector development tends to happen a little bit more accelerated than what it would be, in the government, or government-led proposals. So I guess in the private sector, as I said, there's this concept of there's a demand assessment, and someone's worked out that there's a business need, and then they've started doing pre-feasibility, feasibility, and I guess while they're working through those aspects of the initiation and planning stage, there's lots of things that are happening concurrently to get the project to a final investment decision with a much more mature set of contract documentation, technical documentation, and approvals. Whereas, and all of that is in the private sector is, I guess, driven a lot by finance as well. So people are wanting to know, how bankable the project is. So how much debt and equity is being contributed to that project, and does it fit into the financial and commercial model, and create a positive MPV and profit index. Whereas I guess government-led projects, there is a framework which we move through, and there's an investment logic map which is focused on benefits and outcomes and benefit realisation, and government will tend to make the allocation of money at the end of the detailed business case, and that allocation of budget will allow the agency or the project proponent to go and procure that project, and in that procurement process, there will be development of documentation for tendering, and then once the tender is awarded, the successful tenderer will then move forward in developing the documentation to allow the construction and manufacturing and delivery of that project to occur.
Yeah, certainly, like so many things that need to happen in the background for a project to become a reality.
Yes.
You talk a bit about like the financial side and how, when, for example, is private, I imagine, or like in general, like the financial part of a project and the positive MPV is something that is very important. But you also mentioned that in the government it's also, and in general, maybe in water projects, you want to have not only like a beneficial from the monetary perspective, but you probably want to look into other benefits that water projects also bring. What are your opinions on like your experience in this that maybe is something that is a bit unique into water infrastructure projects, maybe in comparison to other type of infrastructure?
Yeah, and that is the differentiation, I think, between a private project which needs to have that positive MPV, and needs to have a positive financial outcome. Whereas I think about water more as really a social asset, and so in the consideration of the benefit, it is more in line with, I guess, broadly the economic considerations, and thinking about the economic considerations, very broadly. So again, it could be, and if I use an example of WaterAid, by way of example, so WaterAid, helps develop projects, or contributes to the development of projects in emerging economies, and so from the investment that WaterAid makes in projects in those emerging economies, you can see the social benefit that comes out of creating water, and access to water. So I talk about water being the elixir of life, and in those emerging economies, It allows good social outcomes. It allows good health outcomes. It allows good educational outcomes. It adds to then as society evolves, it then starts to add to the economic wealth of that country, and therefore there's a different lens to look through in terms of benefit and um, and what is the return on the investment, other than just purely being a pure financial consideration.
Yeah, I think that that would be, especially with water being such an important part of our society. Like it's the actual piece of infrastructure, concrete, the pipeline, the pump station, whatever might have like a benefit economically, but also it has like ripple effects down in the society, especially in countries in development and through the water aid projects, for example, which is a very good kind of frame to see how those water projects can have a major effect in into these societies. And we talk about the sustainable development goals of cameras, and we were talking, yes, these projects might be tackling the one number 6, which is are all around like clean access to water, but like
Mm-hmm.
in doing that is also having effects in other sustainable development goals, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as we spoke about, I think that water should be SDG 1, but I understand why there's others. But it gets back to, add water, and there are so many, benefits that are derived. And that's why we need to, I guess, understand the impact that water projects and the development of water infrastructure projects has on the environment. So we need to ensure, that we have healthy, clean waterways, and that through assessing that impact, the environment that doesn't have a voice, that somehow is given a voice, and all of the fauna and fauna that's associated around in and around waterways is not impacted, and we keep on making sure that the environment isn't worse off as a result of the development of our water projects.
Yeah, absolutely. Related to that, like there's, I've heard a lot lately about like the concept of nature-based solutions, and also the concept of adaptive planning. And I think it kind of ties into what you're saying of like, how do we make sure that our projects are not harming the environment just because the environment won't have the absolute voice into coming at us and say, you shouldn't be doing that. But how do you think concepts like this, like taking a more approach of like using nature-based solutions, or also implementing things like adaptive planning in this life cycle of projects, is changing the way that we're delivering these projects?
Yeah, and there's some urban water infrastructure projects that are using the natural processes in wetlands and in rivers, to, I guess, mimic some of the things that are happening in the environment to increase the health of our waterways. Um, so water is a subsystem of the planet, and there is lots of water um, on the planet, predominantly our oceans and the like, but and of course, we're 70% plus as human beings are made up of water, so water is important. So having an understanding and system thinking when it comes to water resource planning and how we bring water infrastructure projects to reality it's crucial. Um, it's Also, thinking uh, about then the benefit that those projects deliver to I guess to all of the stakeholders, really.
Yeah, yeah. Especially like in that stakeholder question, I had my next question was around the community. How do you see the role of community, and what is normally the role of the community in this whole life cycle of a major project that we're talking takes 5 to 10 years, all this planning, design, construction, all of that. From your experience, what is the role that the community normally has, and how is the best way that we can engage them?
Yeah, the so here at Sunwater we have a dedicated team uh, that consults with our customers and the community and other stakeholders, whether they be government, agents, other government agencies, and the like. Um, so, mature project development frameworks are very inclusive of communities. So, whenever you're developing and delivering a project within a community, you need to, I guess, consult with those, and a lot of the work that we do in the water sector also is increasingly having a stronger reference to our traditional owners, and that is, out of respect for uh, them being the custodians of the land and the waterways, and their long history associated with water. So bringing in community and stakeholders early in those discussions, it brings in some diversity of thought. It also adds some challenge in some cases to what we're doing, and when done well, it allows the co-creation of a project. And it's much easier to accommodate and change project concepts and the like during the planning stage. Obviously, during the execution phase, when you're starting to build hard infrastructure, that can become quite problematic.
Yeah, yeah. But I think the concept of co-creating and maybe bringing people in the journey of like
Mm,
helping them understand and listen as well of what their worries is and what they're thinking that is the best choice, and then just get into the middle. That's normally would be kind of quite ideal. But yeah,
mm.
um, Mal, what do you think is the biggest challenge that in the future, like in this space of development and delivery of water infrastructure projects, what is that biggest challenge that you think we will be facing in the future?
I think first and foremost, understanding that water, um, you know, it's a finite resource, so um, it isn't endless. So it is understanding the environment and the system in which you're operating, um, and how to actually make the best use of water, um, as a scarce being a scarce resource that it really is, um, and to continue to value water when thinking about how best to use it and the solutions that you can use. Um, and water here in Queensland and probably more globally as well, um, is potentially going to form a part of the energy transition. So being a part of the hydrogen industry as well. So um, so challenges are ensuring that we've got the right people in all of these phases, because fundamentally projects are developed by people, and people are very important in that process. It is also earlier on you mentioned adaptive planning, and it's being able to, as you are planning and developing and delivering projects is to go back and you know to be able to reevaluate how is the current plan working, and do we need to change that to actually get a better outcome. So for us in Queensland, a lot of the work that we're doing in the bulk water space is going to be in relation to dams, and those dams are going to be delivered in remote locations generally. So it is how do we mobilise the right resources? How do we mobilise the right skill set? How do we ensure that we're actually developing industry capability and capacity um, uh, to make those projects a reality?
Yeah, and I think you touched on something that I was also going to ask after, and is about people. Like, people are the one that make all of this happening. What would be, because there might be some young water professionals, hopefully listening to this. What would be your message to them, who might be listening to this episode and learning about the life cycle of a water project?
Yeah, we've all been young water professionals at some stage in our career, and I'm at the end of my career, I think. So maybe I'm an old water professional, but I fondly remember the days in which I entered the water sector, and I started my career at Hunter Water, and as I said, I fondly remember my early career, and it was the ability to be able to get across lots of areas of water. So I was fortunate enough to be able to be exposed to, the planning, investigation of water solutions, the design of water solutions, and the execution of water solutions. So my advice to young water professionals is to remain curious, is to remain hungry for making inquiries as to expanding your knowledge, but also tap into young water professional networks, such as the AWA. There's ANCOL, and get involved in the work of WaterAid. There's Engineers Australia. So seek out people that is going to enhance your knowledge and your experience.
Yeah, that's very valuable indeed. And I would argue that, yes, the young water professional kind of concept, the young part, we have had discussions within the AWA. Is it the right way of doing it? Because it's more like emerging leaders, and we're people that are studying, like hungry, as you say, of knowledge and experience, and like trying to contribute towards all of this. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And just to finalize, Mal, why do you work in the water industry? You mentioned you started in Hunter Valley, but like, what made you stay within the industry?
Yeah. Look, I've always been passionate about water, and I can, it sounds a bit corny, but even as a kid, I remember, playing with water and building dams, and with hoses and all manner of other things. But I think the thing that keeps me in the water industry is probably two things. One is seeing the benefit that water creates, and that's whether that's in um, a mature economic contexts such as Australia, or in an emerging economy. But the other thing I love about the water sector is the camaraderie and the collegiate environment. It doesn't matter where you fit in the water industry, whether you're a regulator, whether you're a consultant, whether you're a constructor, whether you're a utility, whether you're an academic. Everyone comes together and has a conversation, and that happens, through a number of ways. either just in our day-to-day lives or through industry associations such as AWA. So I love it, and I love the people.
Great. That's kind of like two of the reasons I'm still around as well. That the benefit and really the impact that it has, and the people is lovely, really. To just a place where you can collaborate and just find answers together to all the problems and challenges that we have ahead. Thank you, Mal. Thank you very much for your time today. You have provided us not only an introduction and an overview of like how major projects happen, and the iceberg concept that I'm staying with, but also like about the future of what is coming for us in water resource planning and what our emerging leaders can be thinking about into staying curious and staying in this industry, because there's lots and lots to do. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure, Jess, and thank you.
No worries. And to you, my friend, thank you very much for tuning in and listening to this episode of our Water Connection. I hope you enjoyed the ride as always. Follow us on LinkedIn as our Water Connection to hear all the updates and next episodes coming. And see you next time.